We probably could have driven to the motel in a single car, but being in those early stages of my 20s meant that the price of gas didn't matter if I could just go fast. Closed for renovations, the old hat ski resort sat empty for the season. To Richard and I, however, this meant an opportunity to have the whole mountain to ourselves. We knew the risks, or thought we did. Like I said, though, those early 20s grant a brand of stupidity only befitting to young men who believe that adventure and immortality go hand in hand. Staying at the resort itself was out of the question due to the security and construction crews. Thankfully, through a friend of a friend of a friend, Richard had secured a home base at a small, shuttered motel about an hour's drive from the slopes. And all it took was a few large bills placed in the right hands. Just like that, Richard and I had acquired the key to room 102. The key was to be left in a vending machine for us to snag once we arrived. It seemed like a strange place to leave the key because on the off chance a trucker or someone stopped by, they may accidentally have found it. The speed limit was 30 miles per hour, but I was much closer to 50. The roads were still unsalted, leaving the thin layer of ice to feel like glass beneath my tires. When my phone began to buzz in my cup holder, I assumed it was Richard. Instead, 3 letters appeared on my screen. M-O-M. After years of this, I had simply given up. A mother's love, now nothing but a bridge made of embers. I clicked the side button to silence my phone, grabbed my gas station coffee, and drank deep. The splash of whiskey I'd added felt warm inside my stomach. By the time I pulled into the empty lot at 4:45, the darkness was already heavy. The dirt beneath my SUV made a crunching sound which felt louder in the empty parking lot. Where I expected to see Richard's car was nothing but graying mounds of snow. No headlights cutting through the tree line behind me, just the cold wind and the dead weight of a silenced phone and a cup holder. I found the key inside the vending machine on the second floor just as promised. The metal of the key stung on my numbed fingertips as I turned my eyes back toward the tree line. The early evening gloom seemed to be crawling toward the building. How could the outskirts of a lifeless parking lot feel so alive? There were no other cars, no signs of life. I turned and hurried back downstairs to room 102. Thanks to a thin layer of ice blocking the keyhole, I wasn't able to initially push in the key. Only after holding a lighter to the slot did it finally give way. Inside the room, there were 2 beds covered with beige and green sheets. Across from them was an old CRT television that seemed to be missing a power cord. Not that that mattered. In the morning, having the mountain to ourselves would prove all the entertainment we would need. Much better than old episodes of The Price is Right or Judge Judy. The mountains stood tall above the motel and cast a long and threatening shadow that swallowed the room. I felt alone, and the reflection of myself in the window made it apparent just how true that was. Stepping back outside to retrieve my gear, I noticed the pitch darkness really setting in. The trees began to disappear as the sun continued setting. It was then I realized just why the motel felt so oppressive. None of the lights had been turned on. Not in the lobby, not in the rooms, and certainly not in the parking lot. Unless we found a way to break into the main office, we'd be spending the night in nothingness. I brought my suitcase into the room. Despite planning to only stay for 1 day, I packed several layers worth of clothes and a baggie of protein-heavy snacks for when we were actually on the slopes. I laid claim to the bed furthest from the door. As I sat there, I began to grow somewhat bothered by the fact that I had still not heard from Richard. Just as the thought had entered my head, I felt my phone vibrate within my pocket. I flushed it out. Mom again. All I could think was, God damn it, woman, leave me alone. I let it ring into silence. I needed to move, to feel something other than the chill from outside still digging its teeth into my flesh. A shower. Washing the long drive off my body sounded perfect. I went into the bathroom and turned the hot water on. The pipes made this deep and unsettling sound, almost as if the walls were moaning at me. And to make it even more eerie, I could hear the sounds echoing in the vacant rooms on both sides of me. Finally, water began to spray from the shower head. Ice cold. It would need some time to heat. Returning to the main room, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above the sink. I looked like a wreck. In a desperate attempt to heat up, I drank more of my booze, the liquid burning a path down my dry throat. As I placed the bottle back in the bag, my phone screen came to life one last time. New voicemail, Mom. I looked back into the bathroom. The mirror had vanished, replaced by a heavy layer of silver condensation, obscured by the haze of a newborn steam. The blank surface of the mirror felt more Familiar, unreachable, stuck between cold and warmth. Stepping back into the shower, the water didn't just warm me, it scalded. I took a deep breath in. The steam tasted of rust and old pipes. The water wrapped around me with a stifling airlessness, like the uncomfortable embrace of a loved one while you're sick. It was a burning I couldn't escape, one I didn't want to. It was a heat that I had earned. I stepped out of the shower, and the bedside clock read 6 o'clock on the dot. The red LEDs of the clock did a surprisingly good job of lighting up the room. Richard was late enough that the silence of the room was being overtaken by the thrummings of an early stress headache. What to do? I retrieved the King James Bible from the nightstand and began flipping through the pages. I landed on a verse in Hebrews that read, "Remember those who are in prison, as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you also are in the body." It felt too real, too close to home. I slammed the book shut, watching as a small cloud of dust puffed from the pages. Whiskey was a better religion. I tried Richard again. 6 rings, then the voicemail. "Please don't leave me a message. Seriously?" His voice sounded young, unaware of the freezing fog outside. I hung up before the beep. In some way, leaving a voicemail felt like talking to a ghost. I needed a project, some way to keep my hands busy. So I looked out the window. There was no way that Richard was ever going to find this place in the dark. Breaking in was a way to be the responsible one for once, a way to prove I wasn't just a drunk kid hiding from a phone call in a shut-down motel. Not only was the door to the motel lobby locked, it had a metal gate on the inside. On top of that, I had to assume there would be an alarm system. Hoping to see any type of clue for how to get in, I pressed my face against the cold glass of the door. With how dark everything was, I almost missed the silver layer of graying natural light peeking into the back room. Surely, that meant there was a window on the rear side of the building I could try to open. Getting behind the building was trickier than expected. The wall of the building sat flush against a muddy slope. There were all these thorny bushes, making it impossible to grab anything to maintain balance. My hair, still damp from the shower, began to stiffen and freeze. When I found the window already open, I didn't find it ominous. It felt more like luck. That's just how stupid I was. I assumed the universe wanted to help me out, make things easier. In reality, seeing the open window of a closed motel should have been a red flag. Before even trying to climb in, I threw a few large rocks into the motel. If there was an alarm, the stones should have been more than enough to trigger it. I didn't hear anything. So I shimmied up the building, my back against the wall and my feet on the slope. I stumbled backwards through the window, landing on my ass. Even in the dark of the back room, I could still see my breath. A rush of adrenaline came over me as I realized I was now the king of a dead castle. I could take any key I wanted, anything, to ignore my phone just a little bit longer. A voice in the back of my head tempted me, pointing out that I now had access to every single room. The motel was my oyster. But a more reasonable, more Richardly voice also popped into my head, pointing out that the only prize worth finding was a room with working cable. Using the light of my phone, I searched for a way to turn on the parking lot lamps. Everything was controlled from a fuse box behind the main desk. So I hooked my fingers under the master switches for the lobby and lot and pushed. The building didn't just brighten, it groaned. Somewhere deep beneath the cold dirt, a transformer awakened. Its guttural metallic humming could be felt in my teeth. And that is when I saw him. On the second floor of the motel, just above our room, stood a man in a police uniform. If I had somehow triggered the motel's alarm, that was just too quick of a response. And the cop didn't seem to be patrolling. No, he seemed to just be staring into the window for the room above mine with a blank expression on his face. He didn't even react as the lights in the lot came on around him. I took a minute to scan the rest of the parking lot. Where was the cop car? There was this internal struggle, a debate, on whether it was better for me to stay in the lobby or to rush back to room 102 and gather my belongings. Sure, the lobby meant I would probably not be seen, but did that matter? If the cops saw the fogged up windows from my shower, it would become abundantly clear that somehow someone had broken into the building, and that would only be bad news for me. Hiding behind the counter in the main area, I waited for the cop to leave. He didn't. Instead, he retrieved a phone from his jacket pocket and began dialing a number. As soon as he pressed the phone against his ear, I felt my own phone begin to vibrate. Not the mom buzz I'd grown used to at this point. This was the sharp staccato vibration of Richard's ringtone. My thumb swiped the screen before I could even think. In a hushed voice, I said, "Where the hell are you, dude? I tried calling. Hold off before you pull up. There's 424. The voice on the other end spoke. The voice was Richard's, but something wasn't right. It sounded electric, almost mechanical. 338. No. Taking deep, slow, and controlled breaths, I kept myself hidden behind the motel counter. The stale air in the room only made it more difficult to breathe. I wanted to shrug all of this off as the cop had pulled over Richard, taken his phone, and was using it to call me, something like that. Anything to make sense of the moment. That was a stretch, though, and did nothing to explain the weird mimicry of Richard's voice. Eventually, I built up the courage to peek back over the counter. The cop was gone. I waited. A minute passed, and then a second. I realized then I had become a beacon. I had turned the lights on. I had invited the world to look at me. Shaking, I reached back and slammed the master switches off. The lobby black again, the darkness constricting. The sudden silence was heavier than the noise of the transformer. The warmth the whiskey once offered my belly was gone, now replaced by an aching, acidic pit. I climbed out the back of the building, not caring about the bushes scraping and scratching me as I ran alongside the slope. The trees atop the hill felt closer than before. The branches reached for me, asking me to lose myself in the captivating void forever. Whispering a silent prayer to myself that the cop was still gone, I turned the corner back into the main lot. As soon as I was back in room 102, I instantly slammed the deadbolt. Before gathering my things, I rested my head on the cold wood door and gathered my thoughts. Once my breathing had steadied a bit, I began to pack the few belongings I had brought inside. The light of the alarm clock was just barely enough for me to get everything in my suitcase. I zipped the bag shut and thought to myself, fuck, since when did zippers get so loud? Why hadn't the cop left a note on my car? Had he even looked at it? The more time I was afforded to think, the stranger everything felt. Like, what the hell was that call from Richard? I could not shake the uneasy feeling that the cop was the one calling from my friend's phone. I needed to hear Richard. The real one. So I hit redial, pressing the phone so hard the cold numbness became a sharp sting on my face. The phone didn't even ring. 42433. Richard, I whispered, my voice breaking. Rich, man, if this is a prank, I'm leaving. I'm serious. Please pick up. The next move was pretty damn clear. There wasn't going to be any early morning run, no sunny slope vacation. The mountain had now felt alive. Something about it felt timeless, like it preyed upon fears that mankind had forgotten somewhere down the evolutionary line. I decided to look out the window one last time before leaving the room. What I saw coated my bones in an ice no motel shower could shake. The lot was no longer empty. The cop stood by my driver's side door, and near the lobby, a figure dressed in a cheap Spirit Halloween bellhop costume waited. But the figure standing at the tree line is the one that truly broke me. It was so dark, but I was certain I knew that face. There was no way, though. Just like before, when the cop pulled his phone out, so did this shadow of a person. When the light of the phone screen illuminated her face, I knew to pull out my phone in preparation of what was to come. There it was, just as expected. The word mom. I answered, but I didn't say a word. I waited. 8, 3, 9, 8, 4, 5. We. Now there was no doubt in my mind. I needed to find a way to get past the cop-shaped creature and into my car. That wasn't a bellhop. That wasn't a police officer. And if that was my mother standing on the precipice of the snowy woods, then I had bigger problems than a minor breaking and entering charge. I finished off the last bit of my whiskey. As I left the room, I smashed the bottle on the door frame to give myself a weapon. If If I were to stab the cop creature, I didn't think he'd be throwing me in prison for drinking and driving or assault. Get away from my car. The words came out much weaker than planned. Yet, they were loud enough to summon another couple dozen entities from the woods. Some I recognized, like my elementary school bully, still a child. Some of the bodies were completely unrecognizable. They looked like they were sculpted from clay, their maker only knowing what a person looked like from books. Their faces were out of focus, like a photograph taken mid-sneeze. That thing, the one that looked like a cop, began to yank on the door of my Toyota. In unison, he and all of the others began to whisper the word, "Cat," over and over. Cat, cat, cat. I found it strange I could hear the harmony of their hushed words. Maybe it was the quiet of the snow dampening the world? Or, more likely, I could hear even more voices coming from the trees in all directions. Were they telling me to get in? Were they just repeating part of me yelling at the cop to get away from my vehicle? I suppose in that moment, none of it really mattered, because the only word racing through my head was out. I bolted toward my car. The mother figure sprinted toward me. Her voice, along with the voices of 100 others in the woods, spoke together their first full sentence. "Sweetie, I have some good news. Sweetie, I have some good news." They all sounded like my mother, just more stilted and lifeless. All that I had was my adrenaline. I let the frantic beating of my heart block everything else out. Panic was the only emotion serving me in that moment. I fumbled for my key fob and hit the unlock button. A couple of beeps, and then the cop fell to the ground as he was still yanking on the handle to the door. With the door now wide open, I didn't need to use my makeshift weapon. I was able to jump straight into the SUV. My engine purred to life on the first turn of the key. Slamming the door behind me, I watched as the cop stood up. It wasn't really standing, though. No. Almost as if there was an invisible string or something attached to the top of his head, he was pulled up, appearing weightless in the process. His eyes met mine. Hell no. I shifted my car into reverse and slammed my foot on the gas. My car fishtailed and spun out, but eventually the tires found solid ground. As I barreled out of the motel's parking lot, I took a glance at my rear-view mirror. I expected to see the creatures chasing after me, or for them to keep blabbering weird-ass phrases. Instead, they seemed to give up. They stood there for a moment before retreating backwards into the woods, each step meticulously placed in the footprints they had made on their way out. The alcohol, snow, and speed were probably a bad combination, especially when driving downhill in the dark. I mean, really though, what would you have done if you found yourself in my snow boots? Knowingly risking my life, I pulled out my phone one last time. Despite the anger in my heart, some piece buried deep down still wanted the comfort of the woman I once called Mommy. Or maybe I just wanted the confirmation that that thing in the woods wasn't actually her. I dialed the number for my voicemail. "Hello, sweetie, I've got some good news," the voice said. This version of my mom felt much more warm, more real. "My parole hearing is coming up next week, and I have a good feeling about it this time. I'm really doing my best. I know you're not ready to forgive me yet, but I'd love to see you. You can set whatever terms you want. I just miss my baby boy. Please, even if you don't want to see me, can you call me back? I'd love to just hear your voice. You know your mom is always going to love you." "Okay, well, I'll try to reach out to you again sometime tomorrow. I hope you're safe. I love you." Click. I drove down the slopes, listening to nothing but the soft hum of my heater fans. While it felt nice on my skin, it made the air feel thin and suffocating. I needed the adrenaline rush to chill out. Oh, how I missed the sense of immortality I'd felt only hours before. My mind kept drifting as I drove down the side of the mountain. As I looked out the window, the trees reminded me of the bars of a prison cell. Were they locking me in, or something else? Once I was finally at the bottom of the mountain and closer to civilization, I decided I needed to break my mind free of its wanderings. Something other than 24/7 Arby's to make me feel grounded back in reality. It felt like it was time to try calling Richard again. After all, I hadn't passed his car on my way back down. Hopefully, Richard was tied up with a flat tire or a girl, or just wasn't able to reach me. Was that really that big of a stretch? Too afraid to stop, to pull over, I scrolled through my contacts to try and call him again. Sure, it would have been easier and quicker to just go to the recent calls, but I didn't want to touch any of those numbers. They felt tainted to me. Once I hit his name, the phone rang. Once, twice, and then finally after a third ring, he picked up. Hey, what's up? I could hear the muffled sound of something playing on the TV in the background. Rich. I took that moment to exhale. Where are you? I just got off the mountain and I'm heading back home now. There was a brief pause before the noise from the TV in the background could barely be heard. Huh? Was all he said. Old hat, something up there is right fucked. Turn around. Don't go to the motel. What the hell are you going on about? Richard said. I'm at home watching Netflix. We talked about Old Hat like months ago, but I already texted you. It didn't pan out. Are you drunk? Do you need me to come grab you? I couldn't answer immediately. If he texted me saying that Old Hat was off, I certainly never got it. Without realizing, I damn near doubled the speed I was driving. The threat of a cop pulling me over had a different weight to it now after the night I'd had. A world of late-night, last-minute fast food felt miles behind me. The road was dark, long, and never-ending once again. And in the darkness, as the snow began to fall, I felt like somewhere in the distance I could see all of them. My mother, the cop, my goddamn elementary school bully. I'd see something out of the corner of my eye and correct my rearview mirror, only for there to be nothing there. Despite the heater keeping the cabin of my RAV4 warm, my goosebumps just wouldn't subside. Hey, are you still there? Richard's voice came from the speaker. Shit, sorry. Yeah, I'm good. You don't have to come grab me. I snapped out of my trance. I'll explain later. Is it cool if I crash at your place tonight, though? My door is unlocked. I wanted to feel comforted by my friend's voice, but in those last few words, I found myself questioning them. There was this feeling I just couldn't shake for the life of me. The words were comforting, but the cadence felt rhythmic, intentional. There was a pause between the words. What reason did I really have to believe that suddenly this was the real Richard? Still, I sat there with the phone pressed against my ear, and in that silence, I swore I could hear the TV in the background one more time. Sweetie, I have some good news. Sweetie, I have some good news.